Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. This is going to be a fun discussion. Today, we're going to do a topic of favorite post-2000s album. So what we'll do is, I guess we'll go around. You can pick one album that's your favorite, and then maybe give like one or two quick honorable mentions, but like not really go into it too much because we want to let everybody to have a chance to speak and to share. So maybe you can name your honorable mentions, but we'll kind of stick to, a good 5 minutes each or so for everyone to talk about their album and why they're picking it as their favorite post 2000s album, any album post the year 2000, and tell us why it's your favorite. So cool. We got a cool group of folks here from Patreon. If anybody wants to join these chats, you can join us over at Patreon. At any tier, you can join these chats. So hopefully we'll see more folks coming up for these. These are always really fun. Why don't we start off with, who am I going to pick? First one on my screen, John. Welcome to the channel, John. This is your second chat.
Yes, my second time here. Yes, thanks, Marker.
Yes.
Okay, so I had a couple I wanted to go with, and I thought I'm going to go with the one that I think really goes to me personally. Warlord, the Holy Empire. Maybe a lot of listeners and viewers may not know this one too much, but it's a personal favorite for me. I've loved Warlord since I first heard him in the mid 80s when I kind of went through a Metal Blade thing. I like the Holy Empire. It's not like the Deliver Us album, but it's got a lot of moments where it's very epic feeling. Yeah, maybe the production's a little light on the guitars, but it's a very mature sounding album, and I kind of watched it grow in the social media groups for them. So it just became, I felt like a little personal touch to it. So it was kind of, that's always going to be a favorite for me. I like a lot of the tracks on that. 70,000 Sorrows is a great track. Killzone with Giles Lavery is a great track. City Walls of Troy. I mean, there's just a lot of stuff that's been kind of in Bill Samus's head. Rest in peace. We lost Bill last year. It was just a favorite of mine and a favorite group of mine. So, are we going to do the honorable mentions now or wait till later?
Sure,
Okay.
Sure. Go ahead. Yeah. Sure.
So my honorable mentions, and of course the Holy Empire, that album came out in 2013. The other ones that kind of stuck with me for a long time is what's on my shirt here is this X-Toll. Undeceived, a band from Norway, just a brutal kind of a black metal / Christian metal / thrash / all kinds of things, but a very, very good album. And then I figured this one might get the one that might get me laughed off the page. Wasp and the Golgotha album. This one really stuck with me. Some of these albums just really stuck to my bones, and that's just part of my DNA. So those would be my choices, but Holy Empire definitely, because of course we lost Bill last year. So
nice,
very good.
Nice,
yeah,
thanks,
cool
John. By the way, if anybody has anything to plug, go ahead. Whenever you share, just let us know what you're working on. I don't know if you have anything, John.
I'm just starting a little channel. I don't really have much of anything on it. I did a little video on Warlord and on another band called Mortification, but other than that, I don't really have much on there, but I'm working on getting a better name for it. So we'll see what comes along.
What's the name?
I don't know. I'm still kind of debating on that. The music corner seems to be kind of sticking with me a little bit, like my music corner of the world kind of thing. Nice. I don't know why, but we'll see.
Send me a link.
Okay.
Andee, you're up next. Let us know what you're working on and what your favorite post 2000 album is.
Okay. I'm not going to plug anything. I don't have anything in particular that I need to really to promote. I'm wearing the t-shirt of the band I'm about to talk about, Primal Scream. They made an album called Exterminator. I went with this one. It was obviously really hard to pick one album out of 2 decades worth of music. I ended up going with this album because I realized that it was probably the most, it was the earliest release out of all my favorites. This album came out January 31st, 2000. Primal Scream, for those who are not fans, a band from the UK. De facto leader is Bobby Gillespie, who was the drummer of Jesus and Mary Chain on their first album. Has a history of just burning down whatever they did last time and doing something completely new with each album. So they had like a period where they had like a birdsy jangle, then they had kind of like a stonesy swagger. They made an acid house record called Screamadelica in 1991. They did a variety of different things through the 90s, but this album is far and away my favorite thing they've ever done. It's just a nasty, furious, seething kind of electronic house record, I would say. But it sort of offers up the curdled dreams of rave culture in this really kind of this really kind of bitter, white noise blasted delivery. And I think the kickoff single was Swastika Eyes. And there's a Chemical Brothers remix of that tune on this record that's even better than the original. You know, the thing about this album is that it's sort of predicted that the atmosphere of the 2000s. I mean, this is pre 9/11, pre Afghanistan war, Iraq war, and this album is just sort of an extended rant against fascists and the military industrial complex and all this stuff. It's a real potty mouth, angry, jaded album, but it's really exhilarating and hypnotic. There's a tune on there called MBV Orchestra. That stands for My Bloody Valentine because it features Kevin Shields, the mastermind of My Bloody Valentine, who had basically been in retirement for almost a decade. And he makes an appearance on here and offers a lot of strafing guitar noise on a couple of the tracks. There's one gentle tune called Keep Your Dreams. It kind of has a kind of hushed optimism to it. But for the most part, this album is just kind of an exhilarating, furious piece of work that I think sums up that kind of just the raw nerve end kind of feeling of the 2000s. So that's my number one. I could have picked any of these as number one. I've got a few honorable mentions. Hot Hot Heat, Make Up the Breakdown. Perfect album, no fat on that. Basement Jaxx, Kish Cash. I could have picked any of their first three albums of maximalist house music producers. MIA, you could throw a dart at any of her albums. I'm going with Maya, with a difficult follow-up to her big smash. Nikki and the Dove, Rasheen Murphy, Ladytron, Witching Hour, TV on the Radio, Return to Cookie Mountain. These are all favorites from the last 2 decades. And I cede my microphone.
Awesome. Thank you, Andee. Why don't I go next, actually? This is going to be very special for me because I don't often have like physical stuff to show. So I'm going to show something physical. I'm going with the band. Anybody who knows the show knows I'm a fan of King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. I gotta see. I gotta try to shut off my background because I'm going to show you this record that I bought. I know Ryan doesn't like new pressed vinyl. He likes just like classic pressed vinyl when vinyl was around. This is brand new. It's sealed. Obviously, I've listened to this digitally. I bought this on vinyl a couple of years ago because I really, really, really like the record. I really, really, really like the band. I just think it's a really cool album. It's one of their heaviest, and not that it has to be heavy to be good, but it's very heavy. It's very atmospheric. There's a lot of progression, like there's a lot of long tracks on. In fact, if you listen to the album, it almost sounds like one long song, although there are quick little breaks here and there. You can see the track listing on the back. It's kind of hard to see, but this is almost like one long song here. This is almost like one long song, right? The Lord and the Lightning versus Balrog, amazing, just really cool. Very up tempo, fast tempo, heavy album. In fact, like anytime that it kind of slows down, it's still kind of groovy and heavy, even though the tempo, there's no ballads on this. It's a very driving album. The drums are just driving. They're just driving the whole album. Very fast tempo, driving, heavy, cool, lyrics. So the lyrical content is heavy in itself, a little graphic, a little morbid. There's some spoken word dialogue stuff going on for narration, which is really cool, especially on the last track, Murder of the Universe. But yeah, there's just some awesome stuff. The Lord of Lightning, check it out. If you don't know much about King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, this is a really cool album. Of course, I've listened to it on Spotify, but I had to go out and support the band and buy the vinyl. So there's only a handful of vinyls I have, and this is one of them. So they're one of my favorite bands from the last 2 decades, and this is one of my favorite albums from them. For honorable mentions, I'm going to go with Orb, Naturality. Orb is kind of like a heavy doom band, doom metal. Almost, they kind of sound like a classic 70s heavy metal doom band, which is really cool. And Dead Ghosts Can't Get No. I really like Dead Ghosts. I think they're from Vancouver, so I think they're Canadian. And Can't Get No has a couple of my favorite tracks from them and a couple of my favorite tracks from the 2000s. They're more of kind of like a punk rock-ish type band that almost, if I'm going to compare them to somebody, they kind of remind me of like Iggy and the Stooges. So I kind of really like them. And that album's really cool. But yeah, that's me. And why don't I pass it along to Nick Esquire?
Hey, Marco, thanks. I found this exercise tough. And I'm not sure why. Music of the last 20 years, I don't think has resonated with me as much maybe as it should have. I've been off in different directions, listening to different types of music, but you know, this show is geared mainly towards rock. But I found it a tough exercise. And frankly, when I narrowed this down, I don't know if you put any of these in my top 10, but there's some good ones. I'll go quick with the honorable mentions. Well, first, this is probably the one I've heard. Well, which albums have I heard the most? That's got to factor into it. Would I recommend these to anybody? And then the third criteria I had, does it have any personal significance for me as well? But here, this one I probably listened to the most. This is Baby Shark. That's always on, or it would be something like by Taylor Swift that I'm always bludgeoned with by my other daughter. If it was 2000, because Marco cut it off, I would definitely have picked this one, Super Shine. I think there's a album vinyl reissue with notes from Mr. Popoff. And other honorable mentions would be this guy here. I probably listened to this CD the most, if you could see it. Mike Harrison, vocalist from Spooky Tooth. Only thing is, Marco and I have already talked about that one, so I don't want to talk much about it. And this is a good one here. I know someone who did the artwork on that one, Trouble. And this guy here, Ian Hunter, Shrunken Heads.
Nice.
Ian Hunter's Pissed Off in 2007, and that those songs resonate even more today. The title track is worth the price of admission. This one I'd really love to pick too. I probably didn't listen to it the most, but this is Gary Wright's Wonder Wheel. It's an album that sat on the shelf for about 44 years and was finally released in 2016. Fantastic. Little George Harrison in there. But the one I picked is this one by Ian McLagan, Never Say Never.
Wow.
Ian McLagan, the keyboard player from the Small Faces and the Faces, and then he was a famous sideman, a musician's musician. Played with the Stones and Dylan and Bonnie Raitt, and had his own band for years. He passed away in 2014. This thing came out in 2008. This album became a tribute, in a sense, to his wife Kim, who was killed in a car accident in 2006. She had some fame in her own right. She was a model back in the UK, and then she was the Mrs. Keith Moon for many years. And a lot of stories about those two, but and you get a little, unfortunately, you get to know a little bit about Keith Moon if you read about him and his relationship with his wife. He adored her, but he probably treated her the worst of any human being on the planet. But she was killed in a car accident in 2006. He writes this album. It's really introspective. Songs are really personal. There's a guy grieving. He's going through it all. He writes songs maybe for her grandkids. So it's a bit of a tough listen for some of those songs. You get some flashes of the Faces in there with some songs, but a lot of this is introspective, and he's got a weathered voice. I think the songs suit him. In his band, he's got Mark Andes, who's played in Heart and A Million People, mixed by Glyn Johns. I recommend this thing. If you know the backstory with his wife, and you listen to these songs, that you feel like you're like, really grieving with him, but you feel better for it. So this album, and good luck finding it. I know I found it on a streaming service. I know it's on YouTube. And it was weird. It really didn't do much, but it was funny that when it first came out, it was featured on a CBS Sunday morning show. They actually reviewed it and they gave it really great reviews. So Mac, was a great guy. I got a chance to meet him. This is a personal connection. When this album came out, he toured East Coast, Philadelphia around 2009. And my bandmate got to open up for him just solo without the rest of the band playing, and got to meet Mac. And then I met him again just a few months before his death. And he was one of those guys where you meet him and within 5 minutes, you feel like you've known him for a long time. And he's really, really great guy. Matter of fact, I mentioned the fact that, hey, Lucinda Williams just came out with an album. And I said, you're all over this thing. It's great. And all he wanted to talk about was Lucinda Williams, how great she was. So he was such a self-effacing, down-to-earth guy. And he was really a wonderful person. I know musicians really like to have him play on albums and tour and that sort of thing. So if you can find it, I recommend Ian McLagan.
Very cool.
Thanks,
Awesome.
Nick. I'm going to send it over to Reid next.
Sorry, not paying attention. No offense, Nick. What I love is so far I haven't known a single album that anybody's mentioned. So I'm going to rewatch this show and start checking some of this stuff out. I love getting turned on to new music. So I'm a huge metalhead. Some of my favorite bands are Dio, Iron Maiden, Megadeth, Nevermore, which is going to make it a big surprise that to me, the greatest album of the 2000s is Noel Gallagher's High Flying Birds, Chasing Yesterday.
Yeah.
I was not an Oasis fan in the 90s. I only heard 2 songs on the radio. I didn't think they were that great. Never sought out the music. And then I don't even remember what led me to Noel Gallagher's High Flying Birds now. His first album came out in 2011 after Oasis had broken up. I probably read about it in a guitar magazine. I buy a bizarrely large amount of music based on what I read rather than what I hear. And I just instantly fell in love with it. And then he didn't put out another album until 2015. And the reason I think it's such a fantastic album, well, there are a number of reasons, but one, this comes up a lot in people talking about rock music with the legacy acts. There's really a point where they just stop evolving, right? If you go and you listen to Iron Maiden or Accept or Judas Priest, you know what you're getting. And this album, Chasing Yesterday, is absolutely not that. It is an artist in the middle of evolution. On the first Noel Gallagher's High Flying Birds, there's still a lot of Oasis material. But on this album, he completely breaks away from that and starts over as an artist. It's fantastic. Now, his brother Liam is putting out an album that sounds exactly like late period Oasis, and I love that. It still plays great. As Noel says, he's making a lot more money than I am. He plays huge gigs in stadiums in England. But Noel is doing whatever the hell he wants. During the lockdown, he put out a bunch of EPs. One had an electronica dance song and a sea shanty on it. So he's just creatively fearless now. And I admire that. Also, I love the fact that it's an album put out by a guy who's basically my age. Noel Gallagher's a few years older than I am. And he writes songs about aging and about the experience of aging. And, there's a certain thing about middle age where you're still young enough to remember what it was like, but you're not too old to have hope for the future, right? And that's what I get there. Sorry.
Yeah.
If you compare Oasis to the Beatles, a lot of times they're compared to the Beatles, although I think they're much more like the Rolling Stones or the Who. But Noel Gallagher's High Flying Birds first album would be like his Sgt. Pepper's to me. But this album is more like George Harrison's All Things Must Pass. It's a creative statement. It's got elements of it because it's a guy that wrote songs for the band, but it's something completely new and it's beautiful.
Nice. Wicked.
Thanks. You're the man, Reid. Thank you.
Now, I'm only going to do one honorable mention. I could come up with a whole bunch, but there was no way I could not mention David Bowie's Black Star.
Wicked. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I just noticed that this album came out the day he died. I was like, what? He released an
I think
album just before he died.
I think it was one day
and
after.
Yeah, one day.
I was not expecting an avant-garde post-rock masterpiece. It's just so different. But I want to make a strange correlation. I know I've already talked about my one album, but to me, the album that's most similar in all of David Bowie's catalog to this one is One Outside. David Bowie had a lot of angst about the new millennium coming, and he put that into One Outside. And it was a very weird album. And I think he also, I mean, he was dying. And he took all of that angst and put it into this album.
Cool. Yeah.
Awesome.
To
Thanks,
clarify,
dude.
I think it's 2 days difference. I think it's the 8th to the 10th of January, I believe. Yeah. But yeah, an amazing album. Yeah. I always talk about that album as a krautrock album.
Yeah,
It's
there's elements of that.
pretty amazing, you know.
There's
Yeah.
so much saxophone on it, though,
Yeah.
that it really drives home those jazzier elements.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. Cool.
Cool. Why don't you go next, Martin? Dive
Okay,
into your
so
album.
so yeah, I didn't know we were allowed 2 honorable mentions, but I will mention, because one I put away. I actually just did a little audio clip for a buddy who has a podcast who's doing Christmas songs, and I picked Krampus from Snowy Shaw. Everybody go watch that video. Krampus, Snowy Shaw, unbelievable, priceless. And Nachtgeist as well. He's like the black metal Devin Townsend. He plays everything, he writes everything, he sings, he's got an amazing voice. My other honorable mention was this one, Porcupine Tree, Fear of a Blank Planet. I love, you know, the albums around this as well, but this one is so thematically really cool, and I think they were absolutely at their height. I consulted, I put these all back in print. They're kind of expensive, but these are all the reviews books, and I'm only ordering like 10 or 15 at a time. But the funny thing is, I did a 2000s one where I co-wrote it with a buddy, and it's 600,000 words. But I had a list in the back of 100 favorite albums of the 2000s. Now, mind you, this doesn't include the 2010s, but at the top of that, I had Fozzy, All That Remains. Everybody's always amazed that that's there, but I played the heck out of that album at the time. It's got my 4th favorite guitar solo of all time. Zach Wilde guests on one song. You gotta hear that guitar solo. It's the 3rd or 4th song on it. But the album I picked was the first one I thought of, Clutch, Blast Tyrant. I play this all the time. I love it. It's got some of the greatest production I've ever heard on it, produced by Machine and the band. I've always said that Neil Fallon is my 4th favorite lyricist of all time, you know, Blue Oyster Cult, Pi Dubois, Captain Beefheart, and Neil Fallon, right? The drumming is incredible. JP Gaster, just such a tasty drummer. You know, I've always talked about, I think I did a podcast episode about making the blues interesting for metalheads, and you talk about the history of Zeppelin and Cactus and Mountain and ZZ Top and Foghat and Status Quo. Well, Clutch is the band for me that does that in the 2000s. This is actually 2004. It's their 6th album of 12 so far. I also love Earth Rocker and Psychic Warfare. Don't like the new one very much. I'm not happy about that. But yeah, there's the reissue. They reissued it with a whole 2nd CD, and it's got a in 2011. There's kind of the cool slip cover of it. The full title of the album is Blast Tyrant of the Invisible World, with illustrations of strange beasts and phantoms. And it's just track after track, banger after banger of amazing semi-progressive bluesy stoner rock with huge riffs, incredible analog production, tasteful playing. There's a couple of semi-acoustic songs, you know, swamp rocking. They're kind of like a semi-southern band in that respect, but just great storytelling out of Neil. And I think a lot of Clutch fans consider this a high point of the Clutch catalog. So there you go, Clutch, Blast Tyrant.
Awesome. Thanks, Martin. Why don't we go with Peter next?
Thanks. In the first part of the century, there was a revival called garage rock. And I'm a sucker for garage rock revival. There were so many great bands, like you had the Strokes, the Vines, the Hives, White Stripes, the Datsuns, just to name a few. So out of all of those, so many great first albums, I picked this. So Arctic Monkeys, whatever people say I am, that's what I am not. This is a bolt out of the blue. It was a spiky, energetic sort of debut album from this outfit from based in UK, Sheffield. They originated in 2005 or previous, basically on MySpace. And they put this album out, and it turned out to be the the fastest selling debut in UK record history. So this album, the main songwriter is Alex Turner. His influences are David Bowie, John Lennon, Leonard Cohen, Eagles, Black Sabbath, and Led Zeppelin. You've got a potpourri of all these different influences into this one record. And basically, it's an album that is just observations of, young adults living in Sheffield, lads going out, getting drunk, trying to woo women at 3 a.m. in the morning. So you got songs like The View from the Afternoon, I Bet You Look Good on the Dance Floor, really witty song titles. You probably could have seen For the Lights, but you were staring straight at me. I would describe the music as you've got a little bit of, energetic push and pull of guitars like Gang of Four. Then it'll go into like some sort of a psych Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath. And then it'll go into something Beatlesque and very jangly. It's a potpourri, it's energetic, never a dull moment, great songwriting. Alex Turner is a great songwriter in regards to his lyrics. It's very observational. So it's just sort of life in Sheffield. So here's just from the album cover, you can see there's all these little photographs. It's just what it's like to be in England, as a young adult in 2005. And it's just great. I saw them live in 2006 in Australia in a 2,000-seater. And the thing that struck me when I was seeing this band, I was thinking, this is just like what the Beatles would have been in the Cavern Club. It felt like John Lennon fronting a garage punk band or pop band in 2005. Great live. And I believe this album went eventually gold in US, and they started to build on that. And I think Alex Turner's based in the US. So they're one of the bands that have gone on with the job, but there've been a few in that garage rock first part of the decade that didn't really go on with the job. But that's my pick for the post-2000s. Other honorable mentions, The Strokes, this is it. Look, people went gaga at the time. I think it still holds up, very influential. To me, it sounds like a band that, if it's a little bit, to me, Velvet Underground meets the Cars with no synth. Don't ask me why. Iommi fused with Glenn Hughes. Glenn Hughes just singing his lungs out. I think that, Iommi always thought that Glenn Hughes on that Seven Sign, he really liked his vocals, but we all know what happened then. So we gave him another go, and this is the outcome. So I think that's a great album. And Tame Impala, Inner Speaker. So they're hugely popular, a lot of psych, heavy riffs. No, that's one of my honorable mentions. And there's some others like Reid, Black Star. It's just one of the emotional, great finales of any artist for David Bowie. That gets a thumbs up. Also Radiohead Kid A, I think you've got to say that. That's one of the groundbreaking albums post 2000. But yep, that's my picks.
Sweet. Nice job.
Thanks, Thanks Peter.
Very
Why don't we throw it over to Todd?
Cool.
Okay, so I'm going to, my pick for this was IQ, The Road of Bones from 2014. Quick history lesson about IQ. IQ is a neo-prog band formed in 1981. Neo-prog is kind of the renaissance of progressive rock. Marillion, Asia, Palace, Pendragon, bands like that. The first two albums were really progressive rock in kind of an early Genesis kind of a way. Peter Nichols, their lead singer, is a very kind of a spooky Gabriel-esque kind of a voice. He leaves after a couple of albums, and they get this other singer named Paul Manel, who is a little bit more mainstream. They get signed to a label in the US called Squawk, which is a neo-prog symphonic metal label. And they put them in big hair and hats and fancy clothes. And they make 2 albums trying to be mainstream, and it doesn't really work. So in 93, Peter Nichols, the original vocalist, comes back. They start looking a little bit more like this, a little bit more like a nerdy prog band. And they pretty much go on with very few personnel changes. And they're one of the few bands that I can say that their catalog goes that every album is a little better than the one that comes before it, which is rare. This particular album, The Road of Bones from 2014, is their second to last album. And the one that comes after it is almost as good. This album, well, first to describe what they're like, they're kind of traditional prog, but they've got some metal elements, and their lyrics are really dark, some science fiction themes in their music. But this particular album is a really dark concept album. It seems to be, and I'm going to say that, you know, your mileage may vary because I may have interpreted it wrong, but it seems to be about a guy whose partner passes away, and then he goes through a journey of trying to figure out how he's going to deal with that. There's a song on it called The Road of Bones, which is a very dark, spooky song. And there's an image on the back of a shovel, and apparently he does something unsavory in a graveyard. So it's a very dark album. And there is one of the things about the album is that they've taken an approach with the keyboards where the keyboards are a lot of mellotron, and the sounds are kind of cranked up as far as they can go, and they're very, very loud, and they're really spooky, and they're not like a typical way bands use mellotrons to make a chorus or strings or something like that. The chorus mellotrons on the last couple of IQ albums kind of sound like a chorus of demons. And so it's very dark and really, really spooky. There's one song on here called Without Walls, where it's kind of a typical prog structure of conflict and resolution. And the conflict part, the spooky chorus gets louder and louder and louder to the point where it stops and it starts going backwards. And it's the first time I'd ever heard that. And it's probably the first song I've ever heard that I could describe as terrifying. It's supposed to be spooky, and it is. And it scared me the first time I heard it. But it goes on. The last couple of songs, Ocean and Until the End, are kind of the resolution where the guy tries to, kind of figures out. And in the end, it seems like his partner comes back to him and says, okay, I'm going to spend some time with you now, but then you got to let me go. And so really beautiful album, really touching, really dark and spooky. And it's deaf and also very beautiful. I think I may have said that already, but stunning. If you look it up, it's a double album, but the second part of it is all it's a lot of instrumentals and extra stuff. So if you want to listen to it, think of the first 5 tracks as being the album, because that's what the concept follows. Honorable mentions, I had 8. 4 of them I threw on the floor. I'll go really, really fast. Haken Affinity. This is the first, this is a prog metal band. This is the first time I ever heard anybody play really beautiful soaring melodies and heavy, heavy, brutal metal riffs at exactly the same time. And it really changed the way I looked at metal and turned me into a metal fan, which I wasn't for most of my life. So this is a pivotal album, 2016. Neil Morse, Sola Scriptura. This is a concept album about Martin Luther, not Martin Luther King, but Martin Luther, the reformer of the Catholic Church. And that sounds like it would be awful, but it's fantastic. And it's really dark and almost a really, really heavy, almost a metal album, if you can believe that. 2007 on that one. Riverside Wasteland from 2018. Riverside is a Polish prog band. This is a kind of a post-apocalyptic album. I normally don't like that kind of stuff, but in this case, it's really good. And this is something that when it came out, I probably listened to it for every day for almost a year. It's really fantastic. And then Fear of a Blank Planet. They didn't go to Vancouver, Martin, but I think they tried harder.
Yeah.
They were on Atlantic, and they almost broke through with this, and it's one of my favorite albums. And that's it.
Wicked, Todd.
Thanks a lot,
Very
Todd.
nice, very nice.
Pontus,
I'll be right
dying to see what
Can you hear
picked. I can hear you just fine.
All right, good. Because I'm gonna, since I'm in Sweden, I'm gonna go into Norway. I don't know if you see this one. This is my favorite pick for 2020. This is Hedvig Mollestad Thomasen and her album, which is called oh, it's a title. She made a solo album, and I had to talk about this, the Norwegian jazz scene, jazz fusion scene. There is this great record company called Rune Grammofon, which have released a lot of stuff during the years from 98 onwards. Avant-garde, hard rock, very much fusion. And Hedvig Mollestad Trio is one of the leading trios on that. That it is Hedvig and another girl playing bass and a guy playing drums. And it sounds like as if John McLaughlin and Tony Iommi switched bands for couple of albums. It's very good. It's energetic. It's just raw, heavy fusion at its best, and it's Norwegian. It's just fantastic stuff. I just had to see what this title is. You see, I'm I can't see it. Mostly these CDs are so small nowadays. Honorable mentions, I can tell you later. Elephant Nine is another of those Norwegian bands from Rune Grammofon. This is a twofer. This is Psychedelic Backfire, and this is the second CD. It's two live albums in. It's actually one live album in two sets. One is a trio and one is a quartet. This sounds like ELP on speed. If energetic fusion is your thing, go here. It's organ, drums, bass, and when Reine Fiske comes in, it's guitar. It is smoking. Psychedelic Backfire.
Neat.
So that was my honorable mention.
Very
Sweet.
nice. Wow.
Thanks, Pontus.
Great
Good to see
variety
you again.
today. Wow.
Yeah, I don't think
Before we
anybody's even
move
picked
on-
the same band.
Pontus, can you give the name of the artist again? The woman that you were talking about?
Yeah, Hedvig Mollestad.
Wow,
Okay.
good luck trying to write that down.
All right, that's it.
I
That's
can do
enough
that
for
in the
Google to
comments.
pick it
I
up.
can do that in the comments.
All right. I think we got everybody except Joe, our very special guest. I'm going to throw it over to you to take us home. Take us home, Joe.
Thanks. First of all, I got my man. He's fighting tonight. Yeah, as Andee mentioned and a few other guys, 2 decades is really tough to pick. I mean, it started out, I'm going to throw out a couple honorable mentions. Started out great with The Cult, Beyond Good and Evil. Love that.
Good choice. Yeah.
I had major heart surgery in 2012. Van Halen's Different Kind of Truth got me through it. I would listen to it every day. A Perfect Circle, Eat the Elephant. The Foo Fighters threw out a bunch of great albums. Living Color Shade. But the band that really resonated with me over the last 2 decades is my special relationship with the band Tool. And in 2019, they released Fear Inoculum. And this album is just about perfect. I absolutely love it. I love every song. The thing about Tool albums for me, now I came late in the game because, I mean, I bought them, but they would have those 1 or 2 songs and then I would find myself skipping a lot of filler, a lot of weird things. But with Inoculum, you really don't have that. They have their little interludes, but it's one song after another. The music is heavy. It's progressive. There's a song on the album called Tempest, and Martin, you got to give it a listen because when I listen to it, it throws me back to Xanadu. It really does. In fact, I've seen them live, and Maynard stands off. He stands up on the amps, and it's a 3-piece. And there's times where, I was at a show here in Nashville. I got a family matter going on, but I'm looking at the stage. I'm like, this is like I'm seeing Rush back in the day. But every song, Numa is the second song on the album and is one of my favorite songs of all time. The title track is amazing. There's a song on there called Calling Voices, just is haunting. Descending, Invincible. It's just a perfect album for me. It came out in 2019, and I listened to it at least 3 to 4 times a week still. And it's just beautiful. I've seen them live 4 or 5 times. One of the things that really got me into them too is my youngest son likes them. So we bonded over that and went to concert. The time I saw him here in Nashville, when they played Zombie off of the 100,000 Day album, there was a weird pause and I hear another guitar. I was right about to the stage, another guitar plugs in. It was Richie Faulkner from Judas Priest. And he ripped into like almost like a 5-minute guitar solo during Zombie. And then him and Adam just went and played the solo together with, the talk box solo. And it was just amazing. But yeah, the musicianship in Tool is just incredible. Adam is a unique guitarist. He plays almost all drop D, but it's a lot of cool stuff. He's been influenced everything from, classic heavy metal to King Crimson to Joni Mitchell, believe it or not. Danny Carey is like the new Neil Peart. When Neil Peart passed away, he did a part of the YYZ as a tribute to him live. And Justin Chancellor, amazing bass player, and he really is the backbone. A lot of times you think it's the guitar, but it's Justin playing bass, leading the songs. So once again, Fear Inoculum 2019, it's a perfect album, and it is my pick for my post-2000 recording. So Thanks for having me on. This has been a lot of fun.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
It's great.
Wicked. Yeah, that's been an incredible amount of cool variety and stuff I got to go check out now, I mean, that was really really pretty interesting. We covered a lot of bases and all more or less all new bands, right? I mean, all bands that were more or less recent. So,
and there's tons of stuff to pick from when you pick 2 decades. So it's really cool. I don't think anybody picked the same band, which is awesome. But thanks for coming out, Joe, and thanks everybody else for coming out, and stay tuned to the Patreon page. I'm going to probably post this maybe on Monday because we just put up Nazareth today. So if you haven't seen that, go check it out. That was a really cool discussion between 2 Nazareth authors, Martin and Robert Lawson, who wrote Rasmus Naz, the Nazareth book. So check that out. That's a really cool episode. I learned a lot about Nazareth, and thanks everybody for stopping by, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, thanks guys.
One more point. I have to point this out. I didn't mention this when I talked about my album, but the sticker on the front, I don't know if you can see it, says vomit colored vinyl color.
Wow.
So
What's
I've
that?
never seen it. It's sealed.
That's a
I've never
collect-
seen it, but I've been using my imagination. Vomit splatter colored vinyl. So
It's a
I
different
had to
color.
mention that. I forgot. And then
Yeah.
Okay.
Very cool, guys. Thanks again. That was a lot of fun.
All right. Thanks,
Right,
everybody.
see you.
Awesome.